You know that feeling when you're lying awake at 3 in the morning and suddenly a memory surfaces. Not just any memory, but a moment with your mother. Maybe it's something she said, the way she looked at you, or something she didn't say at all. And in that moment, you feel this weight in your chest. You ask yourself, why does this still hurt? Why can't I move forward? Why do I keep repeating the same patterns in my relationships, my work, my life? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, spent decades studying the human psyche. But one of his most profound discoveries wasn't in some obscure theory gathering dust in an academic library. It was this: you will never truly heal until you understand the relationship you have with your mother. And I don't mean understand it intellectually. I mean really understand it, feel it, face it. Today, we're going on a journey into one of the deepest corners of your psyche. And yes, this applies whether you had the most loving mother in the world or the most painful relationship imaginable. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Your mother isn't just a person in your life. She's a blueprint. She's a mirror. She's the first relationship that teaches your soul how to relate to everything and everyone that comes after. So before we go deeper, I want you to ask yourself this. What comes up for you when you think of your mother right now? Don't answer out loud. Just notice. Notice what emotion appears first. Let's start with something Jung discovered through years of clinical work. He called it the mother complex. Now, this isn't about blame. This isn't about pointing fingers or deciding who was right and who was wrong. That's the old psychology. That's the thinking that keeps people stuck. The mother complex is something far more subtle and far more powerful. Jung observed that your relationship with your mother becomes the template for how you relate to yourself. Think about that for a moment. The way your mother treated you, the way she looked at you, the way she responded to your needs, your emotions, your authenticity, all of that becomes internalized. It becomes a voice inside your head. Sometimes it's her actual voice. Sometimes you don't even recognize it as hers anymore because it's been woven so deeply into the fabric of who you are. Here's the first principle I want to introduce: the internalized mother. This is the psychological structure that most people never become conscious of, which is exactly why it controls them. When your mother was critical, you internalized that criticism. Now you have an internal critic that sounds exactly like her. When she was cold or distant, you learned to distance yourself from your own emotions. When she was overprotective, you might be struggling with autonomy right now. These aren't traumas necessarily. They're imprints. They're neural pathways carved into the landscape of your psyche. Let me give you a concrete example. A woman comes to therapy. She's successful on the outside. Good job, attractive, intelligent. But she can't maintain a relationship. Every time a partner gets close, she sabotages. She picks fights over nothing. She becomes distant and cold. She's confused. She says, "I don't know why I do this. I want to be close. I want love." Then we start exploring her mother, and slowly a picture emerges. Her mother was someone who used intimacy as a weapon. When she was angry, she would withdraw. She would give the silent treatment for days. The message was clear: if you upset me, I will leave you. If you make me feel bad, I will abandon you emotionally. So this woman learned something in her nervous system. Closeness equals danger. Vulnerability equals abandonment. Now, as an adult, her nervous system is running that same program. She doesn't consciously know she's doing it, but every time real intimacy starts to develop, her system triggers. She creates distance because, at some level, she's protecting herself the only way she learned how. That's the internalized mother. That's how invisible it is. That's how much power it has. But here's where it gets more interesting. Jung didn't just want to identify the problem. He wanted to show us the path to liberation. And the path begins with understanding something that most people get completely wrong. You see, when Jung talks about the mother, he's not just talking about your biological mother. Yes, that person matters. But what matters more is the archetype she represents in your psyche. Jung called this the Great Mother. It's an ancient psychological pattern that exists in the collective unconscious of humanity. It's the archetype of birth, nurturing, comfort, but also of suffocation, control, and regression. Now, here's the thing that changes everything. You are not the victim of your mother or this archetype. You are, right now, recreating it. This is the hardest truth to face, but it's also the doorway to freedom. When you blame your mother for your wounds, you're actually giving her power over your present life. You're saying, "She did this to me, so this is who I have to be." But that's a lie. That's the part of you that's still small, that still needs her approval, that's still waiting for her to change so you can finally be okay. The second principle I want to share with you is this: radical responsibility. This is different from shame. This is not about saying you did something wrong. It's about recognizing that you are the author of your own healing. Your mother was a person. She had her own wounds, her own complexes, her own unconscious patterns that she passed down to you. She probably didn't do it on purpose. She probably did the best she could with what she had. But here's the revolutionary part. That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what you do now. Jung worked with patients who had terrible mothers, abusive mothers, narcissistic mothers, mothers who were absent, neglectful, cold. And do you know what he found? The ones who healed weren't the ones who finally got their mother to apologize or validate them. The ones who healed were the ones who took what happened and alchemized it. They took the pain and transformed it into wisdom. They took the wound and turned it into compassion. Let me ask you something. Think of a pattern that keeps repeating in your life, a relationship dynamic, a way you sabotage yourself, a fear that holds you back. Now, can you trace it back? Can you see it in your relationship with your mother? I'm not asking you to suddenly hate her or blame her. I'm asking you to see the connection with clear eyes. Because here's what happens when you do. You realize you have a choice. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice that your younger self didn't have. Your younger self had to adapt. Your younger self had to become whatever she needed you to be to survive that relationship. Maybe you became the peacemaker. Maybe you became invisible. Maybe you became perfect. Maybe you became the rebel, but you're not that child anymore. And the adaptations that kept you safe then, they're suffocating you now. This is where the real work begins. And Jung called this process individuation. It's not about rejecting your mother or cutting her out of your life. It's about becoming yourself. It's about separating from the internalized image of her and reclaiming the parts of you that you had to hide or suppress to keep her love. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine the soul as a house. Your mother is the architect of the foundation. She builds certain rooms, certain walls, certain doors. But here's what nobody tells you. The house is yours. Every room you inhabit, every wall you maintain, every door you keep locked, you're the one keeping it that way now. Some of these rooms are beautiful. Maybe your mother taught you kindness. Maybe she modeled resilience. Maybe she showed you what love looks like even if she was imperfect at expressing it. These rooms are worth keeping. But other rooms, they're dark. They're filled with her fears, her criticisms, her unmet needs that she tried to meet through you. The first step of individuation is walking through your psyche and turning on the lights, seeing what's actually there instead of what you've been told is there. I want you to sit with this for a moment. What beliefs do you have about yourself that you've never questioned? Not beliefs you came up with, beliefs that came from her, the narrative about who you are. Maybe you believe you're not good enough. Maybe you believe you're too much. Maybe you believe you don't deserve love. Maybe you believe you have to earn your place in the world. Write these down if you can. Because the moment you make the unconscious conscious, it loses its power. Now, Jung also spoke about the shadow. And this is crucial when it comes to our mothers. Your shadow isn't just your darkness. It's also the light you've hidden away. It's the parts of you that your mother rejected or punished or misunderstood. Think about this. If your mother couldn't handle anger, you probably learned to suppress anger. If she couldn't handle sadness, you learned to hide your tears. If she couldn't handle joy or sexuality or ambition, you learned to keep those parts of yourself in the dark. But here's the profound part. Those parts of you don't disappear. They go into your shadow, and from the shadow, they control you. You might find yourself attracted to people who are angry or sad or joyful or ambitious, unconsciously looking for permission to be those things yourself. Or you might judge people harshly for those qualities because you can't accept them in yourself. This is the third principle, integration. You have to bring your shadow back into the light. You have to own all of yourself. The angry part, the sad part, the ambitious part, the sensual part, the part that wants to take up space. Your mother couldn't handle these parts of you. Fine, but you can. You're the adult now. You can create a relationship with yourself that's completely different from the one you had with her. Let me give you another real-world example. A man comes in. He's successful. He's accomplished. But he's always anxious. He's always pushing. He's never satisfied. He feels like he's never good enough. As we explore his history, we find a mother who was conditional in her love. She praised achievement. She valued perfection. But underneath that praise was a message. Your worth depends on what you do, not who you are. So now, as an adult, he's essentially in a relationship with an internalized mother who will never be satisfied. He's running on a hamster wheel that never stops because part of his psyche is still trying to earn love from someone who's been dead for 10 years. The healing begins when he realizes, I don't need her approval anymore. I can approve of myself. I can say, I did my best and that's good enough for me. That moment when you stop needing her validation and give it to yourself. That's freedom. But here's something else Jung discovered that's rarely talked about. Sometimes the wound with your mother is that she was too good. She was too available. She couldn't let you separate from her because she needed you to stay her little boy or little girl. She needed you to stay dependent because your dependency made her feel important. This creates a different wound. It creates difficulty with autonomy. It creates guilt when you prioritize yourself over her needs. It creates a nagging feeling that you're being selfish when you're actually just being healthy. If this resonates with you, the work is slightly different. It's not about healing from cold rejection. It's about healing from engulfment. It's about learning that you can love your mother and still leave her. You can honor her and still become yourself. These aren't contradictory things. I want to pause here and ask you, what kind of wound do you carry? Is it the wound of not being enough? The wound of being too much, the wound of having to earn love, the wound of not being allowed to grow up, or is it something else entirely? Because understanding the specific texture of your wound is the first step to transforming it. Now, Jung also taught something radical that's become even more relevant in our modern age of therapy culture. He said that sometimes we can't heal our relationship with our mother until we grieve it. And grief is different from forgiveness. Grief is accepting that your mother was a human being with limitations, that you will never get what you needed from her, that no amount of therapy or conversation will change the past. This is where people get stuck. They keep hoping that if they just understand their mother enough, if they just explain things to her the right way, if they just give her another chance, she'll finally get it. She'll finally be the mother they needed. But what if she can't? What if that's not who she is? What if her own wounds are too deep, her own defenses too strong? That's when you grieve. You let yourself feel the sadness of that truth. And in that grieving, you separate from the fantasy of who you needed her to be and make peace with who she actually is. This is the fourth principle, mature acceptance. It's not approval. It's not condoning anything she did that hurt you. It's simply understanding that she was doing the best she could with her level of consciousness, and her limitations are not a reflection of your worth. Jung believed that this process of individuation, this journey of separating from the mother complex and becoming yourself, was actually the primary task of adult life. Not just for people with traumatic childhoods, for everyone. Because we're all raised by imperfect humans. We're all shaped by the first relationship we ever have, and we're all carrying unconscious patterns that we inherited from our mothers, whether we realize it or not. The question isn't whether you have a mother complex. The question is, how conscious are you of it? How much is it running your life? How much of what you think is your personality is actually just your internalized mother? Here's a practical exercise for you. Think of a situation where you feel stuck, a relationship that keeps failing, a dream you can't seem to pursue, a fear that paralyzes you. Now imagine your mother is in the room with you. What would she say? What judgment would she make? What fear would she project onto you? Now, is that what you actually believe? Or is it her voice you're hearing? Because here's the thing, you can change that voice. You don't have to keep listening to it. You can develop a different internal parent. A parent who is wise, loving, and aligned with who you actually are instead of who your mother needed you to be. This is what Jung called the wise old woman or the wise old man within you. It's an archetype of wisdom and compassion that exists in your psyche, and it's available to you right now. It's been there the whole time, waiting for you to notice it. Jung also taught that healing the mother complex isn't just personal work. It's sacred work. Because when you heal your relationship with your mother, you break a generational pattern. If you have or will have children, you stop passing down the same wounds. You interrupt the cycle. You become the first generation that does things differently. Your children, or future children, or even the children you mentor or influence in your life, they won't have to do the deep psychological work you're doing. They'll start from a place of greater wholeness because you had the courage to face your own darkness and transform it. That's the power we're talking about. That's why Jung said this work is essential, not just for your happiness, but for the evolution of consciousness itself. Now, let me be clear about something. Understanding your mother complex doesn't mean you get to use it as an excuse for your life. It doesn't mean you can say, well, my mother did this, so of course I behave that way. That's the opposite of what Jung taught. Jung taught that understanding gives you choice. It gives you power. The moment you see the pattern, you can choose something different. The moment you understand why you're drawn to unavailable partners, you can decide to value yourself differently. The moment you recognize that you're performing perfection because your mother demanded it, you can choose authenticity instead. That's agency. That's freedom. But here's what I know from years of watching people do this work. The resistance you feel right now, that's also coming from the mother complex. There's a part of you that doesn't want to do this. There's a part of you that's comfortable with the familiar patterns. There's a part of you that's afraid of what might change if you actually healed. Because here's the thing about healing. It's not just about feeling better. It's about becoming someone new. And that someone new won't fit into the old relationships the same way. That someone new will have boundaries that didn't exist before. That someone new will make choices that might upset the people around you. Are you willing to upset your mother to save your own soul? Are you willing to disappoint her in order to be authentic? Are you willing to let her be wrong in order for you to be free? These are the real questions. Jung believed that this process of becoming yourself in relation to your mother is the hero's journey. It's the mythological task that every human being must undertake. And like all heroes' journeys, it requires courage. It requires you to face the dragon, which is the internalized mother inside you. It requires you to claim the treasure, which is your authentic self. And it requires you to come home transformed. Most people never do this work. Most people live their entire lives running from or toward their mother, never actually separating from her. They spend their whole existence either rebelling against her or seeking her approval. But you're watching this right now, which means some part of you is ready. Some part of you is tired of carrying this burden. Some part of you is ready to become the author of your own life instead of the character in your mother's story. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to have a conversation with your mother, not necessarily with her in person, although that might happen. I want you to have an inner dialogue. Imagine her sitting across from you, and I want you to tell her three things. First, I want you to tell her the truth about how her actions affected you, not in anger, in clarity. When you did this, I felt this, and it shaped me in this way. Second, I want you to tell her what you've come to understand about her. What wounds was she carrying? What fears was she living with? What made her do what she did? And third, I want you to tell her goodbye, not in a cruel way, but in a final way. You're releasing her from the job of being your parent. You're taking that job on yourself. This is internal work, but it's profound, because you're separating from the mother complex. You're declaring independence. You're saying, I am an adult now. I will parent myself with the love and wisdom you couldn't give me. When you do this, something shifts. It's subtle at first. You might notice that you're not as triggered by criticism. You might notice that you make different choices in relationships. You might notice that you stop waiting for permission to pursue your dreams. These are the signs that the work is working. These are the signs that you're becoming yourself. But I want to be honest about something. This work isn't linear. You'll have days where you feel completely free from the mother complex, and then something will happen. A conversation with her, a news article about parenting, a moment with someone you love, and suddenly you're back in that wounded place. You're acting like your 10-year-old self again. This is normal. This is part of the process. The psyche doesn't heal in a straight line. It heals in spirals. Each time you come back to the wound, you come with more consciousness, more compassion, more understanding. Each spiral brings you closer to integration. Jung also emphasized something that's especially important in our culture today. He said that healing your mother complex doesn't mean rejecting femininity or maternal energy. It means integrating it in a healthy way. If you're a man, your mother taught you about the feminine. If you're a woman, your mother taught you how to be female in the world. There's wisdom there, even if there was also wounding. The goal isn't to become a person without a mother inside you. The goal is to have an internal mother who is wise, loving, and supporting your growth instead of limiting it. One more thing Jung discovered that I think is crucial. He found that the people who healed most completely from the mother complex were the ones who could eventually hold gratitude alongside grief. They could say, I'm grateful for the ways you loved me, and I'm grieving the ways you couldn't. Both of these things are true. This is the paradox of being human. We're all products of imperfect love. We're all shaped by people who did the best they could while also damaging us in ways they didn't intend. The healing happens when you can hold both truths without collapsing into one or the other. So I'm going to ask you, what are you grateful for from your mother? What did she give you? What did she teach you? What strength of hers flows through your veins? Because if you can answer that question, you've already begun the process of integration. Now, as we move toward the end of our time together, I want to revisit that question I asked at the beginning. That memory that surfaces at 3 in the morning. That feeling in your chest when you think about her. What you're feeling is the mother complex asking for your attention. It's asking to be understood. It's asking to be integrated. It's asking to be transformed. And you can do this. You absolutely can do this. The work is available to you. It might involve therapy. It might involve meditation. It might involve creative expression or journaling or conversations with people you trust. But the work starts with awareness. And awareness is happening right now. You're becoming conscious of the patterns. You're seeing the ways your mother's voice lives inside you. You're recognizing the choices you're making from a wounded place. That consciousness is already the beginning of freedom. Jung ended his career by saying that the greatest discovery of his life was that healing the individual psyche was the most direct path to healing the world. Because the person who has integrated their mother complex no longer projects it onto others. They're no longer looking for their mother in their partners, their bosses, their children, their communities. They're free to relate to people as they actually are. And that changes everything. That radiates outward. That transforms relationships, families, communities. So the question isn't just about you and your mother anymore. It's about what you're going to do with this freedom. What you're going to create when you're no longer bound by her limitations. What contribution you're going to make to the world when you're finally fully yourself. I hope that this time we've spent together has stirred something in you. I hope it's opened a door that you're willing to walk through. And I hope that you'll commit to this work, knowing that on the other side of it is a version of you that you haven't even met yet. That version of you is waiting. She's calling to you. He's calling to you. Your whole, authentic, integrated self is calling to you right now. Will you answer? If this has resonated with you, if this has touched something true in your soul, I'd deeply appreciate it if you could share this video. Because somewhere out there is someone who needs to hear this. Someone who's lying awake at 3 in the morning, wondering why they can't move forward. Someone who's ready to understand their mother, and in doing so, understand themselves. By sharing this, you're not just helping them. You're part of the healing work. You're part of breaking the generational cycle. You're part of something larger than yourself. And if you want to continue this journey with me, please subscribe. Because we're going to dive deeper into the archetypes that shape us. We're going to explore the father complex. We're going to talk about shadow integration and the inner child and everything that Jung discovered about how to become fully human. But for now, I want to leave you with this final thought. Your mother did the best she could with the consciousness she had. You can do better, not because you're better than her, but because you're willing to do the work. You're willing to see. You're willing to transform. That's the gift of consciousness. That's the promise of psychological growth. And that's available to you right now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for choosing to heal not just yourself, but everyone who comes into contact with your healed self. This is the revolution. This is how the world changes. One person at a time, willing to face their mother, face themselves and become whole.